Welcome back, everybody. Bacon and Egg Show, episode number 20. Um, we've been talking a lot about pandemics and everything, all this insanity of 2020. But finally, the show is here. And this is the big Texas Longhorn football preview blowout show. We've been looking forward to this one for a long, long time. Mike, great to have you back. Jay, what's going on? Let's get into this, man. Let's do this.
Yeah, let's just dive right into it, man. Mike, thanks for coming on again. We appreciate it.
Yeah, guys, let's do this. Looking forward to it.
So we're gonna kind of break this out into some different, we're gonna have our segments here, and let's kick things off with kind of wrapping up where last season ended. Bowl game win. This is a Texas football team that needed a bowl game win after the type of season that it had. Big turnover on the coaching staff. Let's just go ahead and dive right in and talk about. Let's start there. Let's start with the coaching staff. Mike, what do you got on this new coaching staff? We've got new coordinators. We have new assistants. Basically, only a couple coaches were retained from Tom Herman's first regime. And what do you got?
Yeah, so I'm just going to pull up a little slide here. So, big changes on the 40 acres here with Tom Herman's coaching staff. I guess some would call it a mulligan with his coaching hires here. I think he hit a home run. So you look at it here, Mike Yursich, the new offensive coordinator. So coming over from Ohio State with Oklahoma State background. And then Chris Ash is the new defensive coordinator, formerly of Rutgers head coach. So I think he hit a home run with both of these hires. With Yursich, I think you see Ohio State's offense, the way they can put players in positions to make plays. And you see what he was able to do as the offensive coordinator, passing game coordinator down at Oklahoma State when they have those high-powered offenses. So he has a great background here. He's going to provide Sam Ehlinger, the four-year starting quarterback here, a major opportunity to progress and go forward and really bounce back after last season. So what do you guys think about Yursich and this hire and what the offense is going to kind of look like?
Yeah, Kerry, I'll touch on Chris Ash real quick. Say what you want about Urban Meyer, but the other day he was ranting on about Big 12 and the lack of the defense or lack thereof in the conference and the lack of defensive players that have been put out. And it just seems like, but that's been like that forever. But the one of the coaches that he called out specifically by name was Chris Ash, and it was in a very positive sense. Urban Meyer, regardless of everything else, is a pretty good evaluator of talent, in my opinion. So the fact that he called Chris Ash out, like we know his background, we know where he came from. Not as much success as a head coach as he's had as a defensive coordinator, but the defensive mind is definitely up there. So that's what I'm most excited about in terms of either one of these. If I had to pick, I'm most excited about Chris Ash coming in, Kerry, and seeing what he's going to bring to the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I think to touch on the offensive side, I think Mike Yursich is – I'm incredibly excited about that hire. I think the philosophy that he's bringing to the program is going to jive well with Tom Herman's. But even to kind of under that level a little bit, I'm just kind of generally excited about this new offensive staff, really. Stan Drayton was retained, which is totally fine with. We see how the running backs are starting to progress, and we'll get into that running back room a little bit later. But and as well as Herb Hand, I think has done a decent job on the offensive side. But I think bringing in Jay Boulware to kind of, and he's, special teams and tight ends coach, a guy that he's a Texas ex, but has been in Oklahoma. It has been a recruiting rainmaker for them, for a number of years. I think was huge. But also Andre Coleman working with the wide receivers. We've talked about, on this show before, the whole kind of Drew Maringer issue with that wide receiver room over the last few years. I'm really looking forward to what Andre Coleman kind of brings to that group there, because if this wide receiver group, again, we'll get into a little more detail about the position depth and what to look for there, but if that group can put it together, they're going to be really, really fun to watch and really hard to stop. So I'm excited about the offensive side, and I think a little bit of continuity and kind of a philosophical alignment, to quote Tom Herman, is probably exactly what that side of the ball needs. going into this season, which is kind of a make or break year, really.
Yeah, absolutely. When we talk about Andre Coleman coming in and replacing Drew Maringer, he filled that role for the bowl prep, and then they decided he was the right guy, which I am excited about that too. Boulware coming in, very detail-oriented coach. He will, I believe, with him over the special teams. I know Herman has said in the past, like he has to do well to have somebody with the attention to detail that Boulware is known for. I think the special teams will take another step in the right direction this year. After we haven't seen. I think Texas was in the negative punt return yardage for the first 7 games of the year last year. It was not great. So hopefully he can bring a boost to the special teams. Mike, of these new hires that we've talked about, and then even we didn't even mention Coleman Hutzler, who will be working with the linebackers. Are there any of these coaches that stand out to you more in terms of what they're going to bring to the table? Is this going to be the year that Tom Herman finally has his guys around him, and like you used the phrase earlier, just sort of mesh well with his staff? What do you think about all these new hires?
Yeah, so to touch on the offense coordinator, Yurcich again, I just think it's a great hire, just with his background and the Jimmies and the Joes, as you like to put it. He's got those, and he knows what to do with these guys. So there is no reason why 35 to 40 on average points per game. It should be – I think it should almost be guaranteed. Obviously, with injuries and things like that could happen, but I think he's just going to bring a different dynamic than what we've seen. And I think he's just going to create mismatches. And that's what college football is all about right now. It's about, getting those mismatches. That's what football is about. It's about getting the mismatches, taking advantage of them. So I think that was my favorite hire of all the ones over the offseason. I love that he was able to maintain Stan Drayton. So this guy has been really developing the running back room. Like Kerry said, we'll get into those here in a little bit. But he's also a lights-out recruiter. So I think keeping him was huge. And, keeping some continuity. You don't want to go into a new season with, everyone is, new. So especially during these times where it's not a typical season right now. So on the defensive side, I do like Huxler. I think he's going to be great. Young, a lot of energy. And I think that's kind of what that linebacker room has kind of been missing. Just, getting these guys ready to go. Because in the Big 12, man, these linebackers are asked to do a ton. So you got to get these guys ready. I'm excited about that position, see what they can do kind of going forward. But yeah, as far as on the offensive side, be Yurcich for me, and then on the defensive side, be the new linebackers coach. So
yeah, Hutzler's no slouch. Like, this is a Broyles Award nominated coach for the best assistant coach in the country. Like that I feel like we almost slighted him by not mentioning him. Along thing. Just because he does bring that sort of reputation and pedigree, like I think he will play a huge part of this.
He's kind of bringing a young Will Muschamp vibe, right? Like he's kind of this young, energetic, just defensive, from all accounts, just kind of this guy that'll think outside the box a little bit defensively, and he knows how to motivate his players.
Coach
I know.
type.
But that it is kind of funny that we're just now getting to Hutzler on that, because that is maybe the most under the radar addition to the team, and it really shouldn't be, but it is, because we're not, obviously we're just getting to talking about it, but it also might be the one that has the biggest effect. We talk about what the offense, like, we know the talent is there and with that offense, but we talk about that linebacking room. There's not a lot there right now. Like, there's some, Juwan Mitchell one day is in the portal, one day he's not. There's kind of, and that's a position that the recruiting has been a little bit of hit or miss. And if that group puts it together, it might not stand out as much as it might with some other, position units on the team. But then he's done his job. Hutzler would crush it if that's a consistent, well-performing group throughout the year. So.
Well, it has to be. Like,
It has to be.
It has to be. Like you mentioned earlier, one of you guys mentioned earlier, it's like you asked so much of linebackers in this conference. Like it has to perform well if this team is going to be successful. That doesn't mean they're not going to give up 35, 38 points on occasion in this conference, but it's just, like it has to be able to play well in the right spots and step up and make plays when you have to. You can't – the linebackers have to get over this, not containing your gap and not get to – like we've seen for so long now, we've just been seeing these linebackers who come in with this big billing and while they make splash plays and they do a good job, it's like you see them making the most basic of mistakes, like, just staying in your gap and taking the right angles. So if we can, if we see that from this linebacking group moving forward, we'll know that the new hire will have made a difference there. Definitely.
So that's a good kind of transition point right there to the next question, going from last season, an 8-5 season, to this year where schedule and everything's a little bit different. What needs to improve? I know it's just kind of a broad general question there. Mike, we'll start with you. What does this team need to improve on to get where they want to go?
Yeah, I think it's the minor details. So I think the pieces are there. But like Jay talked about, the special teams. I mean, it was pretty pathetic on punt return, kick return. You're just like gasping at, receiving the ball. And you have playmakers, so you need to put them in positions and coach them up to make plays. So don't forget about special teams. Like that was a good point, Jay. That's a huge part of the game, and you need your special teams to do something once a year if you're going to have that magical season, whether it's a block kick or a return for a touchdown. You see it all the time. I mean, look at that Alabama-Auburn game.
Yeah.
So I mean, huge. And so that's what championship-winning teams do, is special teams. You look at all the teams that have won titles, man. Their special teams have always been on point. So I think just minor details like that. This is probably the most talented team in the last 10 years. So I think it's putting guys in position. So with Chris Ash bringing in the 4-down linemen now, I think you're going to see a lot of the defensive players have opportunities that weren't given to them last year to go out and make plays. You saw that in the bowl game. Joseph Osai, I mean, you just unleashed that guy, and he went crazy in that game. And so I think just putting these guys in the right positions is really the main thing you need to focus on. And then also having the depth this year is going to really pay off. We look at the running back room. We started off last year with wondering if I'm going to be playing running back, the second game into the year. And now you look at it and, you've got proven guys at almost every level. And then at the levels that where you might not be as, proven, you've got at linebacker and maybe some of the defensive line spots, you've got guys that are now going to probably be put in positions to be able to take advantage of their talent. And because the last 3-4 years, Texas has recruited really well. I mean, you've recruited top 10 classes. So it's about putting these guys in the right positions. And I think that's going to make the difference between, the 8 wins in a 13-game season, to a, 8, 10, 9, should be 9, fighting for a 10-win season this year. So what do you guys think?
Yeah, just real quick on your point about the attention to details. I mean, that is essentially what cost Texas a win last season at Iowa State, right? I mean, this is a team that there at the end of the game was in a position to finish the thing off. You have a jump off side to basically gift Iowa State the victory at that point. It's little things like that can make a huge difference. So yeah, that's a good point on the details. And I think not just for the players, but I mean, I think the coaching staff has had some hiccups of their own decision making. Under Tom Herman as well. So,
well, and that's what we've seen Tom Herman mention. He hasn't had the guys in his mind. He hasn't had the coaches in place to allow him to be a head coach. He's had to spend so much time focusing on, I got to drop into the offensive room and do this, and then I got to see, okay, what's going on over here, and then I got to check on special teams, and it's like I feel like he has the guys in place now that he'll be able to actually be a head coach, be a Mac Brown CEO. And, he's got to, like, he's running out of time to be able to do this. He's pointed to 2020, since early on in his tenure here as being the year. And, I think he's like, this is going to be This is either going to make or break it, and I think they've been pointing to that for a while now. You talked about the running backs. Well, what do we want to? Yeah, I mean, let's go ahead and
let's get into
offense.
these the strengths here.
And definitely, and I feel we've been talking for 15 minutes, whatever, and we haven't talked about Sam Ellinger yet.
Bury the lead.
That's the this team is going to revolve around Sam in more than one way. The leadership that he brings to this team, as well as the quality of play. There's going to be a lot that will be said about Sam Ellinger is writing the last chapter of his Texas story this year. In terms of in the grand pantheon of Texas quarterbacks, he's held in very high regard already. But I think this season, if he's healthy, I think we're going to see something special out of him. So right off the top, for me, the biggest strength of this team is the quarterback, is the leader, Sam Ellinger. I think it's important for us to establish that from the start.
He's a Heisman contender.
Yeah,
Heisman contender, should be in the running for Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year. You look at it, he's got the starts, he's got the talent, he's got pretty good offensive line coming back this year. Stable of backs, some good receivers, and I think he's just going to take advantage of Yurcich and the mind that Yurcich can, break down these defenses and give Ellinger an opportunity to really flourish. And I think that's what you're going to see out of this kid. He's just got to stay healthy, and don't forget about the running game with Ellinger either. That's,
right.
I don't know if Yurcich has, had this type of quarterback that is not afraid to run over somebody. So it just allows Yurcich to do so many different things. And I think you made a big point about Tom Herman just being a CEO. That's what you have to do at these big programs. You can't be jiving into the receiver room wondering if your coaches are being divisive or worrying about how to fix a delayed blitz defense or you don't have time to do all that. You have so many other things going on as the head coach of these big programs that having the two new coordinators, Ash being a former head coach, I think you can just stick him in the defensive side of the ball and just say, hey, handle this. And same thing with the offensive side. So I think the combination of those two things, along with the talent you're bringing back, it's going to be a special season. And so with the quarterback room, you look at it, Ellinger, obviously you know what you have there. Should be in the contention for that Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year. Behind him, you've got experience. Casey Thompson's seen some snaps last year. He's done some good things. So, you've got a little bit of experience behind him. It's not like you're going to have a complete train wreck if Ellinger goes down. At least you have a little bit of hope right behind him. And then you've got Hudson Card and Jaquindon Jackson, who are coming in as a true freshman. And Hudson Card's lighting it up. We talked about it show previously where he's already getting number 2 reps and maybe the bridge to next season. So that quarterback room, if I'm grading it, you're looking at an A. What do you guys think on that room?
Completely agree, which is such a refreshing change from years ago where there seemed to be so many other pieces in place around in the program, but it was always the quarterback situation that seemed to keep Texas. Obviously, there were some other problems going on. I don't think if you automatically had fixed the quarterback room that Charlie Strong was going to win a Big 12 championship and compete for a national title, but it would have helped, and that's where I think in this day and age in college football, you have to have just a stacked quarterback room if you want to compete for trophies, and they have it. I think an A is a good grade on that. It's because I think it could be an A+ if the guys behind Sam pan out into what we think they can pan out to. It's kind of hard seeing some of the other previous quarterback rooms around the country with those are some A+ kind of things when, what was it? Alabama's able to bring Tua off the bench, that kind of stuff. And you go, yeah, I guess that's an A+ QB room. But anyway, I guess they can afford to do that. But no, I just real quick on the position thing. I think if I'm gonna pick a strength on offense that they can really lean on this year, it's that running back room. I think they're going to be a big part of what keeps Sam healthy. I think they're going to be a big part of what Mike Yurcich wants to do offensively. It's going to let this offensive line do what they want to do best. And this is one of those things where if Sam doesn't even need to run, that's a good sign, because that means that guys like Keontae Ingram, which we have here on the screen, Rashawn Johnson, Bijan Robinson, the new transfer that just came in, I have him right here, Gabriel Watson coming in. Like, that running back room now all of a sudden is a real strength and a real weapon, and that's just going to be even more for Sam to lean on, to just not only stay healthy, but to continue moving the chains and keep points on the board.
Yeah, think about it. So last year, you're like, oh my God, this running back room is collapsing. You come into this year with a whole different mindset. With Ingram, a lot of experience, has a lot of 100-yard games under his belt. So that's a nice luxury to have. And he might not even be the most talented one. So that's where your recruiting lights out. And so behind him, you have Rashawn Johnson, super athlete, was a quarterback. Man, he said times last year you're thinking, man, maybe this guy needs to be the starter. So he's got a whole year of learning that position now instead of being thrust into it last minute. I'm looking for big things from him. And then honestly, everyone's excited. We'll talk about him, I guess, a little bit more in depth as far as our little incoming freshman. But Bijan Robinson, man, I don't even know how to describe this guy. Number one back in the country last year, can do so many things. Speed, can catch the ball. I don't know how they're going to keep that guy off the field once he sees it. It reminds me of like knowing Cedric Benson is coming in, knowing Ricky Williams is coming in. It feels like that. And so obviously he's got to show that on the field. And then you don't forget about Jordan Whittington too, who's in the receiver room, but could also transition over to the running back room and do a lot of different things out of that backfield as well. And he was a 5-star, top kid in the state. So it's loaded. I mean, you look at it quarterback, you're like, A. You're looking at running back. I mean, you might give it a B+.
Yeah, there's a little bit of an unknown factor, right?
Yeah, a little bit of an unknown, yeah, but still excited about it. Jay, what do you think about the running back room?
Yeah, I mean, bringing in Watson, who was a D2, their whatever their Heisman's called, he was a finalist for that in 2018, led the country in the division in yards and rushing touchdowns. A little bit nicked up last year, but the talent's obviously there. He was on NFL draft radars after that season a couple of years ago, and he's transferred in now. And just knowing that you have somebody to lean on there, which is with Daniel Young opting out, it's almost like, okay, maybe Watson just immediately slides into that role where you might see Daniel Young for 4, 5, 6 plays, gets him in there some change of pace stuff, or maybe not change of pace, but just whatever specific to his skill set. And but it's a great room. I'm looking forward to seeing Robinson on the field in a game. You hear practice reports, you hear the way that they say this guy, just everything about him jumps off the page, and I'm ready to see it at this level. I'm super excited about Bijan Robinson.
Yeah,
I wanted to.
Just real quick, just on the Bijan Robinson thing, he wears number 5 because he idolized Reggie Bush, and that's what he's modeled his playing style after, which those of you that remember watching Reggie Bush, if he brings anything to the table remotely close to what he did at USC, then we have something here to say the least. So
we're going to be all right.
Yeah.
I wanted to
just don't lateral the ball back in the national championship game to an unsuspecting receiver.
Exactly. Put that on the statue or something. Anyways, I wanted to bring up the offensive line and get your opinions on sort of where that stands. If we're grading, if we're going to just go down and grade a few position rooms here, when you look at this offensive line, you got projected starters here: Sam Cosmi, Junior Angulau, Derek Kerstetter, Denzel Okafor, Christian Jones. There's a little bit of depth behind that as well. Cosmi is a first-round talent. I think as long as he, NFL scouts are looking at him as a first, second round at the latest type of guy. Derek Kerstetter is going to have a strong year. What do you guys think? Mike, I guess we can start with you. Isaiah Hookfin, he's hurt now with the shoulder. They're expecting him back for UTEP, but we got a little bit of depth there, but how are you feeling about that room with what's sitting in there right now, Mike?
Yeah, so this is the make or break right here. I feel like one, you've got two really talented players on the offensive line in Cosme and Kerstetter. You kind of described them already. So they're anchoring the center slot and the left tackle spot. So where do you go from there? So there's been some movement in camp where you just stated on that right side, they're sliding Okafor into that guard spot. And then they're Christian Jones is moving up, big offensive tackle. We'll see what he can bring to the table. That's the question mark for me. I'm not really worried about Denzel Okafor. A lot of experience. He's a senior. But manning that right tackle position, which is where I thought Okafor would actually end up, that's a big responsibility for Christian Jones. And so we'll see what's going to happen. Obviously, he's earned that position so far, so he's got to be doing something right in camp. I think if Hookfin had never gotten hurt, I think he kind of jumped over Imade and some of these other guys and slid into that right guard spot where you kick Okafor back out to tackle, where Okafor's probably more of a guard anyway, but just for getting your best 5 players on the field, you probably wanted him at that right tackle position. So if I'm grading it overall, probably looking at just when you factor in Cosme and Kerstetter and their potential draft picks there, I'd probably put it at like a B minus, just because you've got some unknowns that are right there. I'm excited about the left side of that line. If I'm grading that left side of the line, I'm like, man, this is from center to left tackle. You're looking at maybe an A, because he's like junior, and that guy had a really good first year. And so reports are that he's continuing to develop and could kind of go in that line where Kerstetter and Cosme into that NFL prospect that you're looking at. But the season's going to come down to that right side of that line and what's going to happen. So, Kerry, what do you think about the offensive line?
Yeah. I think that left side's totally fine. I think the story for this offensive line throughout the season, though, is going to be their health. I think if these guys can stay healthy, then things will be okay. Some of those younger guys and some of the unknowns will get rotated in and out. They'll get an opportunity to where you don't have to lean on them as much in the big moments. If they can just stay healthy, and I really hope Hookfin is back, if not for UTEP, at least but before the trip to Lubbock. Just to have some of that depth and let these guys with all the potential in the world start to develop in a manner where they're just not thrown into the fire. And that's the thing, this offense is really going to have to rely on this, because if this line gets devastated by injuries, all those things we're talking about with the running game and Sam staying clean and healthy and all that stuff kind of goes out the window. And I agree with like a B assessment on it, because there is that unknown factor. That thing can jump up to an A+ if these guys stay healthy and we see these young guys produce the way that we think they can, which will only be even better news going into next season. But for this year, though, they just got to stay healthy, because I think they're strong enough on the left side that everything will be okay.
Yeah, I want to move on to the defensive side of the ball, but I don't want to ignore the wide receivers, because of all the position groups on the offense, I think this was the one that I don't know if I want to say worries me the most, but I think that I feel like there's the most question marks at the wide receiver position in terms of just not knowing what we have, because we haven't seen it a ton on the field. So, Mike, quickly, like a brief 30-second, minute long, whatever, wide receiver room, what should we expect, and what are some names that we should pay attention to?
Yeah, so I'm looking at probably a C+ if I'm grading it, with an upside of a high B, because you're looking at Brendan Eagles, flashed with great talent. You got Tariq Black coming in, who we'll see what he can give you. Highly rated player transferring in from Michigan. Excited about him. Jake Smith's going to be man in that slot position, showed flashes. And I think that's kind of what the receiver room is. It's flashes of talent. Right. But can you replace Duvernay? Can you replace Colin Johnson, both NFL picks? I think Ellinger, having him at quarterback, is going to make these guys better. So there's just a lot of guys battling it out right now. Avante Woodard's coming on. You got Marcus Washington. So a lot of talent. These guys are going to separate themselves. I think Eagles and Smith are going to be the guys that really separate themselves from the pack. And then Jordan Whittington as that kind of that wildcat, wild card moving all over the field type position. So, Kerry, what do you think?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a fascinating group to watch, because I think with the Drew Maringer factor removed and letting Andre Coleman kind of dictate, the room here. But I think what's going to be fascinating for this is that I mentioned the Maringer thing because we saw a lot of cases where like Colin Johnson wouldn't be in the game for a significant amount of time, which doesn't make any sense. They would play these weird kind of games about who gets to be on the field and all these kinds of things, where I think this is truly going to be a group where if you produce, you'll be on the field. And there's so many guys that have potential that you know, it's going to be hard to take some of these guys off or leave them off the field. But if guys are making plays, you know, I don't think we're going to see these weird rotations and these things that have been happening over the last couple of years. So.
And then just real quick before we switch over to the defense side, just tight ends. I think that's going to be another question mark. You've got a lot of guys fighting. You got Cade Brewer, who's experienced, but just seems to not be able to stay healthy. So we'll see what he can give you. And then you have Jared Wiley, that transitioned last year from quarterback out of high school to tight end. Massive human being. He's got a lot of upside. And you got Malcolm Epps moving up from receiver, who showed some promise at receiver. So I think if we can get anything out of that, that's bonus. And I think Ellinger, like I said, can help elevate that position group.
And also, real quick on the tight ends, Braden Liebrock is another guy that I think brings a ton of talent in, and he seems like one of those kind of big, natural run and catch type tight ends. I'd be curious to see if he gets any time at all, because that was another kid out of, I think, Arizona, if I remember right, that was kind of a highly touted player. So we'll see if he brings anything. But yeah, I agree. That's kind of a big iffy position group there. It's, again, some talent, but we'll see if they can put it together.
Well, and, you know, it's like you said, it's almost like in my mind, I already wrote off the tight end position because we're so used to not getting anything from it. It's like, what are we going to get out of all of the rest of these position groups? And you know, hopefully that we can see that corner turned with this tight end room. And but the receivers, that's the question marks with receivers are more about who's going to be the person to step up.
Right.
There's talents there.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of question marks as who's gonna grab that brass ring, who's gonna step up and be the guy, because
who's going to be the Lil Jordan or the Devin Duvernay this year.
Right. Somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to be that guy. So we'll see. But on defense now, Mike, I wanted to make sure that I'm excited about this. I'm so excited for this defense and what Chris Ash is bringing. I think that switching to the 4-down lineman is something that will not only help immediately, but it's also going to help for recruiting, because statistics are going to go up for those edge rushers. We're going to see more people on the field. You're going to get recognized. I'm super excited for what this defense is going to look like this year. And I don't know if I'm being overly optimistic here. Maybe I am. Bring me back down if need be. But what do we got going on the defense this year, Mike?
So obviously this all starts with Osai. Should be in the running for Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. So edge rusher, wrecked the Utah game and the bowl game last year. And you just see he's just oozing with talent. He wrecked Georgia as a freshman. And everybody's like, who is this guy? So this is kind of one of those diamonds in the rough that you found in recruiting, not the highest rated, recruit out there. But man, this guy is super talented. I think the strength of the defense is going to be your secondary. You've got a lot of talent. These guys can stay healthy. It reminds me of the running back room, where these guys just stay healthy and stay on the field. You've got All-American candidates and, Caden Stearns and Deshaun Jameson that are pictured here. And then you've just got a lot of guys behind them to where BJ Foster, who could probably start for a lot of teams in the Big 12, may just have more of a package type role right now. So I think that's one of your major strengths, which is a great strength to obviously have in the Big 12. And then on the defensive line, I think you've got, along with those side, you've got Snacks Coburn. I think this guy's going to have a phenomenal year. This is going into his second year, and he showed flashes of some, great things last year. So super excited. And you got the question marks at linebacker. What's going to happen? And I think DeMarvion Overshone reminds me of Drew Kelson, but in a beefed up, a little more athleticism than Drew Kelson. So Kelson was a safety coming out of high school, and he spun down to linebacker, and he made critical plays during that championship season, the strip sack on Troy Smith. Because what he can do is, not only is he 6'4" and 225, where he was a former safety, so he can help cover tight ends, because you got some good tight ends in the Big 12, like we've talked about. And I think he's going to be kind of that X factor on this defense. And then you got Jawan Mitchell, Mr. Portal here, who, if he's locked in and engaged, man, this guy put in the work in the offseason. He's looking great. We'll see if he keeps his head in the game, man, in that middle linebacker position. started all last year for the most part, except for a few times when he was, doing whatever he was doing. So he's got to keep his head on straight, and I think he's got some talent there. So linebacker room, that's probably the biggest question mark. We'll see what we get out of it. But I think having Overshown in that linebacker room is going to be huge going forward. So what do you guys think? I know we're kind of running out of time here.
No, I think yeah. I mean, I think the talent is there. I mean, we talk about Stearns and Osai, these guys they're on everybody's draft radar. These are guys that are going to be playing in the NFL. And I think, especially with Osai, getting him in the best position to succeed is the biggest thing. And I think that with this 4 down front, finally, we're going to get to see him just pin his ears back and go to work every Saturday. And that's what this defense needs. You have a guy that can do that. It's only going to make the back end that much easier for guys like Stearns and Jamison. And having the depth, having, Anthony Cook back in the fold instead of leaving the program, this defense seems to have so much depth all around, minus the linebacker position. But again, for me, it's like we mentioned with the running backs, the offensive line and those things. If they can stay healthy and you get the right guys on the field, this defense this can be a real plus, not just a, kind of average defense that'll keep you in games. I feel like this is a defense that can win you some games and be one of the better ones in the country because they've recruited that well. So that's the hope, at least. But, we just want to see it get put together.
Yeah, 2 things for me. Caden Stearns' health is paramount to the sustained success of the defense this season. He's that good. Like, he makes that much of a difference when he's on the field. There's no accident that they play worse when he's not on the field. He's an NFL talent. He will play on Sundays at a high level, I feel, and if his health cooperates, and that's going to be the case this year. We'll see what happens with him. Second thing, Jay Valai coaching the cornerbacks. That room, while I agree that it can be viewed, the secondary can be viewed as somewhat of a strength this year, it's going to be very telling early on in this schedule how the cornerbacks are responding to the new scheme and the new coaching. So I'm looking for big things from that position group, and I hope Caden Stearns can stay healthy because, man, he's a joy to watch, and he's so important to this defense.
And just one last thing before we get out of here on this segment. When was the last time Texas had probably the 2 best defensive players on the field in almost every game they're going to play? I mean, Caden Stearns and Joseph Osai, that is huge. So I think, and to think maybe you could get one more year out of both of them, wow.
That'd be huge.
Oh my gosh,
that would be huge.
So.
Well, that's actually a good point to kind of leave on. We talk about we're going to get into the trajectory of the program and kind of we're going to get into the schedule and kind of what will define success for this team. So let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to get into those things, kind of what expectations are. We're going to go through the schedule and kind of discuss what we expect out of this team this year in terms of wins and losses and all the fun stuff. So, all right, everybody stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. Bacon and Egg Show, Longhorn Preview Edition. Guys, let's jump right back into it here. We just discussed the coaching changes, and we discussed the positional units on this team. Let's talk about we'll start off kind of with the program from the 10,000-foot level. What is the direction of this program right now? Just is it going in the right direction? What is the direction? Mike, we'll start with you. What do you think?
Yeah, I think if these new coaches work out, then I can definitely see this program starting to become a top 10, top 15 type program going forward. So I think we've touched on recruiting a lot when I've been on. I think you're getting the recruits in. Now you got to, like we've already talked about, put them in positions to make plays and to get you those wins. So the biggest thing about building a program is, one, you got to get the talent. And then you got to build depth on that. And then you got to have the right coaches. And then when those coaches are successful and leave, look at Alabama, you replace them with coaches that can still be successful and that you can. And so what Tom Herman, I think his biggest adjustment is going to be how to be that CEO that we talked about. So can he deal with the ebbs and flows of just being a CEO versus wanting to stick his hand into the offense. So if the defense has a bad game, can he just move on from that? Can he manage like a CEO? And that's the only way you can be successful. And I think, that's the way Mac and, DKR did it. And that's what you have to do with these type of programs. My expectations this year, you got to get 9 out of these 10. 8 doesn't make the seat warm, but it would just be like, oh man, like,
Is 8-2 a successful season?
I would put it right in that gray area where it depends on what happens. If it's an 8-2 because of injuries or because Sam went down or something like that, I could see it as like great season on.
But if everybody's healthy,
man, I'm looking at 9 and I'm saying with everything that's in place, 9 is a successful season. 8 is do we have the right coach? I think starts to become the question. And then you look at the next year where you lose some talent, especially Sam potentially going. And then you start to wonder, like, man, how are you going to build this back up and put yourself in a position again? So I think you got to get 9 and finish in the top 10 and have a chance at this playoff thing, man. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I said last week that, Kerry, Kerry, go ahead, because I think, Kerry, you're pretty much aligned with Mike, right? You're 9 is the magic number for you. Like you.
I think it has to be. I mean, 9 wins on this schedule, and we're going to get into the schedule here in just a minute, going to go game by game. 9 wins means, and this isn't counting a Big 12 championship game, but that means that you either beat OU and lost one that you shouldn't have, or you won all the rest of them and lost to OU, which it's OU. So, of course, you never want to lose to OU, but if that's one that, if you're going to hit, if that's your only loss of the season, okay, you're at least, that's at least to a team that's been consistently making playoff runs, consistently winning Big 12 championships. 8-2 for me gets really interesting because it's kind of looking at this schedule. There's no LSU on this schedule anymore. There's no trip to Baton Rouge where, if a Texas team comes out of Baton Rouge with a loss, you go, well, that sucked, but it's LSU. I think it has to be 9-1, I think, for the direction of this program to go in that, that upper tier that it wants to get to.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is that 8 is just like, okay, we're not ready to be an elite program this year. So, Jay, what do you think?
Yeah, that's why I wanted Kerry. Why I figured that's just after our discussions previously. With 8 is exactly that. It's this was supposed to be the year, right? But 8 isn't enough to get him fired. But 8's enough to be like, all right, so I guess maybe we'll take the next step next year. What are we going to see? It keeps Texas football in a holding pattern, I guess. 8 or anything less than that as well.
Anything less than 8, man.
We're talking.
Then yeah.
There has to be Sam has to go down with an injury, and even then, you should come close. Like you should win at least 7, even if he goes down early in the season.
You've got enough talent on the field to win 7. If you play Casey Thompson for 6 games, you should still win. You know what I mean? Like that should still be a thing, even if the guys behind him aren't, whoever's on the field, you should be with that talent at Texas and this schedule. I mean,
that's a perfect segue. That's a perfect segue. Let's get into this. Let's get into the schedule here because I think this makes for an interesting when we talk about looking at the actual meat of this schedule. This is what kind of crystallizes all these thoughts for us here is that, so let's get after it. We don't have it on this one as it was released, but UTEP is the first game of the season. Home game. That one's coming, that should be whether Casey Thompson or Rashawn Johnson starting at quarterback. They should win that game against UTEP.
Kerry McAllister.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about that, but like, I don't know if I have good balls. My ball security might not be as good as the other ones, but it's but we can all agree that UTEP should be a win, right?
Yeah.
All right, so we're going 1-0. There's actually a bye week after UTEP before the trip to Lubbock, which is interesting. But this is a team that should win in Lubbock. They should.
Oh yeah.
Tech is in the middle of a transitional period. They don't have the pieces yet, and
They don't have the
especially
defense.
they don't have the defense, and they're not the same kind of air raid team that we've seen before. They can give the defenses fit, and defense fits. And a trip to Lubbock is always dicey because of the fans. If there's hardly any fans in the stadium, what difference is this going to make in in late September? So
Yeah,
I,
and
I'm on board.
I
I think
think
this is a win for Texas.
I agree. I think it's good. It's a fortunate scheduling for Texas, because even if the defense isn't totally, uh, if they're not in rhythm yet, if they're not firing off on all cylinders, I think playing against Texas Tech, the offense is going to score so many points. It's not going to matter if the defense makes a few mistakes here and there. You don't want to see that, obviously. I think we will, to be honest with you. I think that's going to be a game where we come back on this show after the Texas Tech game and we're like, all right, like, let's pick some of this apart and what are we going to watch to see improve? But Tech's a win for me. Yeah, for sure.
All right, TCU in Austin. The debacle last year in Fort Worth that was another one of those ones that kind of put the nail in the coffin for Tom Herman's assistants. Duggan's a good quarterback. He's a good young quarterback, but we've mentioned it here before, I think, some health issues. He may not be in this season or not. TCU is an interesting program in its own right, but this is a game, again, I think at this point in both programs, the direction they're going, Texas should win this game.
Yeah, for me, TCU, it's like last year you look at it, you got Tyler Owens in the secondary. Like, I mean, the amount of injuries that, not to make an excuse, but they flat out beat us. But that was a game we just gave away.
4 picks for Sam in that game, right?
Yeah, that was the worst. I mean, yeah, Sam had probably the worst game of his career in that game. So just not a good performance. And like I said, that was the nail in the coffin for a lot of the assistants right there. And just kind of a downward shift, it felt like, with the coaching staff. So this one should just be a win. I mean, you're going to 4 down linemen now. I don't think they're going to be able to punch it down your throat with some of the talent you have up front. And they don't really have the air raid. There's no Jalen Rager this year. So, I don't think TCU should be at least double-digit favorite over them. So that's just kind of my take on it.
Yeah, I mean, the one guy, they have the safety, Morig.
Morig, yeah.
Yeah, that's a guy that stands out to me. But other than that, yeah, that should be one that Texas handles easily.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we're all kind of in agreement here that this is a team that should be 4-0, sorry, heading into Dallas. 3-0 actually,
yeah.
sorry, heading into Dallas. Always an interesting game for a variety of reasons. The scene, the setting, the fans, the fair, all those things. A lot of that you can throw out the window this year, but it still comes down to making the plays on the field. And, as history has shown us, never, the underdog or whoever you might think is the reloading team or whatever, like anybody can win this game, anybody. But we're breaking it down, and OU is replacing another quarterback. I know that Lincoln Riley can just replace. He probably could put me at quarterback
probably
and win 9 games this season, and I could probably be a Heisman finalist. But that's just, but that speaks to how good he's been there.
Yeah.
But beyond replacing, Jalen Hurts and their, Spencer Rattler's supposed to be everything he's cracked up to be, but they got to replace Kenneth Murray. They've got their running back room has been completely devastated by transfers and all these things. This is
no Kennedy Brooks.
Exactly.
Caleb Kelly, their middle linebacker's gone. He's supposed to be one of the most talented. Yeah, I mean, there's no excuse this year, Kerry. Sorry to jump in on you, man. I feel
no, you're absolutely. That's exactly where I was going. Yeah,
strongly about this game this year. Whereas we might be more talented than Oklahoma this year, and the more talented team sometimes doesn't win all the time in these matchups because of the momentum swings and the fanfare and the Cotton Bowl. That's not there this year. So this is you're just going to go up against all these teams man to man. And on paper, I think if you break down the position by position, we should have them beat at most positions this year. And this is the year. There's no excuse this year why you can't beat Oklahoma without with the limited capacity and those different things. Like, it's just no excuse for it this year, especially with Sam. having experience in this game so many times. Like, you know what it means to him being from Austin.
And won it. And he's won it before. So this is not a
Yeah.
case where he's like coming in 0-3 all time against OU, and this is
And
the
they
last
don't have
shot.
a first pick quarterback this year.
Right.
So, Jay, what do you think about this game, man?
If there's going to be a year, this all aligns for Tom Herman this year to run, to win these sort of games. And I think this is a win for Texas this year. I think they go in to the Cotton Bowl, and there's going to be an attitude about this team going into this game, and I mean that in a positive sense. There's going to be a swagger. There's going to be this, they're going to play. What's the word I'm looking for? They're going to look loose. I feel like this team will look loose. I feel like this team will play with confidence, and the Oklahoma game is one that, if this in the year that, I don't know what year, I don't know when this win will come for Tom Herman.
I agree, because you think next year Rattler's going to be a sophomore and have the experience, and now you're replacing it with, he's the number one rated quarterback. So I mean, this will be his third or fourth start. Like, this is everything lines up scheduling wise for this to happen.
This feels like the 05 Texas OU game to me.
Exactly.
This is what that feels like. Like, it just so happened it aligned where Texas was the ascendant program with the experience and the chip on their shoulder, going up against what was a rebuilding project for Bob Stoops in 05, and they're trotting Rhett Bomar out there as, early on in his career, which,
Money Bomar.
Yeah, but it has that feel to it where if Texas just shows up and they're not tight, they should win this game decisively just based on the experience and all those things. I know it's Texas OU, throw the records out the window, all that kind of stuff. But on paper and the way that this is set up, it sets up just like that 05. At least that's how it feels for me, is like that 05 game where they just come out by the mid-second quarter.
Yeah.
This isn't they're in good shape.
Yeah, this isn't a game where Gerard Hurd could be at quarterback and rush for 90 yards and Texas could win a game as an underdog, because there aren't going to be the huge momentum swings. Like, that's just not in the cards this year, which is why we'll talk about this game here in a second. Going to Oklahoma State this year shouldn't be as hard as it would normally be. And we'll talk about, I guess we can jump into Baylor.
Real quick. So I guess we're all on the same page that this OU game, as of today, should be a win for Texas.
Yep.
Okay.
80% for me. Like, it should be a win. Like, 4 out of 5 times they play the same game on October 10th. Should be a win.
So let's jump real quick, because the Oklahoma State things, I do want to spend some time on that one. But Baylor, Matt Rule's gone. I know Charlie Brewer's still there. He's a gamer. He's tough. All those kinds of things. But they lost a lot. Dave Aranda's got a real rebuilding project in front of him here.
Yeah.
And it's in Austin. And I think that there is going to be a little bit of a chip on the shoulder after the way things went in Waco last year, which was another nail in the coffin for this assistant coaching staff. Tom Herman headbutting players before the game, and the whole thing was just a farce before kickoff. So that being said, this is a game Texas should win, right?
Yeah. For Jay, you want to go?
No, go ahead, Mike.
Hey, so the only thing about this game is that Baylor's going to be a wounded dog. No one's going to care. I mean, if we even get 25% capacity in this game, I'd be shocked. And don't count out Charlie Brewer in Austin with a chip on his shoulder. That's the only thing that I could look at. Other than that, talent-wise, it's night and day. I mean, the only thing that scares me is Charlie Brewer going, rage mode, and that shouldn't happen. So
he might do that, and it might still not be enough.
To
win. And that's sort of the way I'm looking at this game is he may have the game of his life, and it wouldn't be enough to bring Baylor to a victory.
Exactly.
I think we're all in agreement here that Baylor's a win. So with that being said, Texas is 5-0. Going into Oklahoma State, going to Stillwater, and this is a point in the season for me. This is the trip up game for me. I don't feel good about going to Stillwater. I even in whatever circumstances are. I am very, very high on Oklahoma State this year. To me, you go there. You got Chuba Hubbard, running the ball. Tylan Wallace is coming back from his injury, but he's a superior talent. It's going to be a real test for that secondary at that point and for the defense in general. Boys, to me, I'm actually – this is the loss in the loss column for me. This is the first loss for Texas this year. How do you guys weigh in on this game?
I'm going to disagree with you here. I think this is a game. The media's picked Oklahoma State to finish second in the conference ahead of Texas. They're getting some of that sweetheart love. We can, I don't necessarily agree with that, but it is. They're because of those reasons, because of Chuba, Wallace, now quarterback coming back, second-year guy. But I think this is the kind of game. I think Tom Herman broke his duck against Oak State last year, kind of got out of this funk against Gundy and this group. But I think the fact that it's going to be limited capacity, and this to me just seems like one of those kinds of games where Tom Herman will have them ready to go. These kinds of games, I don't know. It just seems like I have a feeling this is one where it's Halloween night.
That's exactly right.
I don't know. I have a feeling Texas goes up there and handles business because, and we'll circle back around to this. I'm a little bit more concerned about, I think the point Mike, that you made about Baylor is a really good one because that's the kind of game that Tom Herman would lose.
Yeah.
He has those games on his schedule every year going back to Houston that should be on paper is a decisive win. But something happens, whether the coaching, injury, something like that, they lose a game that they should win decisively. But Tom Herman's been pretty good about winning the games where they're either it's a toss-up or he doesn't have a problem with motivating the guys to go for those. And I think Oklahoma State's going to be one of those games.
Yeah, for me, 9 wins, I think, is where it's at. So it's either going to be the Oklahoma game or the Oklahoma State game. So I do kind of agree with you, Jay, here because of the talent that they do have. You got a Heisman finalist, and really Tylan Wallace is going to be up for the Biletnikoff. Might win it this year. So, this is a talented team, but I just love that everything has set up perfectly. If this was a night game, Halloween night, Oklahoma State, I would just be like, all right, regular circumstances, be like, okay, I can take this L, and move on from it. But I don't know, man, just seeing how those same guys were still there last year and look how the defense performed. A lot of our defensive guys are coming back for this game too. So
they shut Tylan Wallace out of that game.
Yeah, they shut him out. Chuba, I think he ran the ball 35 times to get his number. And he barely got to his numbers. So yeah, this one's a little scary for me. It's going to be one of these two that I think we trip up on, either the Oklahoma or Oklahoma State game. I think it's what it's going to come down to is the quarterback play for Oklahoma State. If this kid progresses at all, it could be really scary. But if he's just, minor progression or even the same quarterback he was the year before, I don't know. At the end of the day, when it comes to toss-ups, I'm like, who has the better quarterback?
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's Sam. So,
well, and I also wonder how much of the internal strife this offseason in Stillwater might have to do. A lot that can be said for a lot of programs around the country right now with everything going on. But I'm curious what that kind of relationship does with those guys and with Gundy. Who knows? We'll see. I don't know. That's one of those weird ones I actually have a pretty good feeling about, but
I don't think this year is going to be one of those years where the Gundy factor, if he shows up in another One America News T-shirt or something like that, I don't think it will affect the quality of play like it may have in years past, where the players are feeling so much strength and power right now that I feel like even if with everything that's going on in these locker rooms and the self-inflicted wounds that Gundy brought to the table. I don't feel like that will play as big of a part in anything this season because the players feel so empowered anyway. They're going to go out and ball out because they feel like it's almost like their duty, like they're obligated to go out there and ball out, and they want to. But to your point, that this type of stuff does play a factor year in and year out. So we'll see. But yeah, no, I feel like that's going to be the one this year, and obviously we'll keep going through the schedule, and there may be another one down the road that we feel like we'll trip up as well. But let's move on to the West Virginia game, guys. That one's in Austin, November 7th. Anything but going to Morgantown, like even Morgantown with no people, I feel like would be just spooky. I don't know, man. I don't. It's here. It's West Virginia.
That might be the one game on the schedule when you talk about like the road games, at least, where you probably want fans. Like, how Erie, Morgantown, like on a night game, empty stadium, you're like animals out in the mountains making noise or something. Like, it's
and you just hear all you hear is wolves. You got Ellinger's underneath center, and you got Blue 82.
Yeah, it's like, let's get out of here. Anyway, sorry.
but how do we feel about the West Virginia game, guys?
To me, it's move on.
I think it's
Bijan Robinson goes for 150.
In the first half.
I think this is when we see Hudson Card play quite a bit. So West Virginia has given Texas fits over the years, but this might be the worst West Virginia team since they've joined the Big 12. And
since they joined the conference, for sure.
Home game, that whole I think Texas rolls.
Yep.
Texas rolls this game. So Kansas.
All right.
At Kansas. The Mad Hatter, who almost pulled it off in Austin last year. What do you guys think about this?
Go ahead.
Hot take. If we win 8 games this year, it will be because we've lost one of the Oklahoma State games, and because we went to Kansas and screwed up. Hear me out.
I don't disagree with you, by the way, but I'll let
They have 2 guys that are on first team all conference. Parchment, the receiver, and Puka Williams, who is probably
he's legit. Both of those guys are legit.
If he played at Oklahoma State, I think he would be better than Chuba Hubbard. I don't know. That's just my take on it. That guy is special. They know they can hang with Texas from last year.
They scored 48 on Texas last year.
And so they know they're exactly. Texas needs to come out and they need to be aggressive and they need to put it to them and not let these guys think they have a chance, because you let an offense like this where you have 2 guys that are really talented, no different than Hubbard. They're like a poor man's Hubbard, and as the way the media views it, a poor man's Hubbard and Wallace. Now they don't, the quarterback play is obviously not there with them. But anytime you're on the road, I mean, it is college. These are kids and 18 to 22-year-olds. Anything can happen. And so my hot take is if we win 8 games, this is the one, like you were saying, Kerry, about Baylor potentially being that one. This is the one that I could see that Tom Herman struggle bus, not just because of last year. And yes, I mean, that still stings in the minds, but because they're actually pretty talented on the offensive side of the ball. And that's scary. Like, people just are going to overlook them this year. And I think if they don't ruin Texas this season, they might ruin someone else's season this year.
Les Miles has got a special touch too in winning these kind of weird games. He always finds some kind of way to do something like that. So
Mike, I completely agree with you in terms of the Kansas playing spoiler aspect. I don't think it's this game though. I think that it may be ugly, but I think they find a way to go to Kansas and win this game. I'm with you though. Like, this could be one of those that when we're talking about it the week after, we're like, that was ugly, but you go on the road and you get a win in the Big 12 sort of thing. And I think that's going to be the case. So they're a win for me as well. But I think that'll be a great one. And Les Miles is whatever you want to say about him. The guy can coach, and the talent is starting to arrive and assemble in Lawrence. So
he reminds me of Ned Yost, of the former of the Royals. He's like, you are not that great of a coach, but you luck yourself into being a great coach.
Well, that's the thing is, like, some guys just know they're in the right place at the right time. That's just some guys, and he seems to be that type of guy. Like 100%, I agree with you. Kerry, we agree that the Kansas game is a win for you as well?
I think it's a win, but I think this is going to be a closer and more interesting game than people think. I mean, I'm looking at last year's box score. We talk about Puka. He had 25 carries for 196 and 2 touchdowns. He also had, where is he at here? 4 catches for 25 yards. Parchment only had 3 catches, but they were for 83 yards and a touchdown. Yeah. I mean, Kansas did not have any issue moving the ball last year in Austin. And I know we talk about the defense for Texas stepping up and doing what it needs to do, but those guys can play. And that is not, I just think, Kansas has been a laughing stock for so long that it's easy to kind of go like through the schedule and go, oh, well, that's, Kansas, that should be a win. I think this one's going to be a tougher game.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a win, but I think it'll be closer than people think.
Yeah, and I think hindsight's 2020. I'm kind of glad last year's game was a little bit closer because now you know that what Puka and Parchment can do. You're not going to come in here like, thinking that you're just going to walk out of here. These guys are going to come at you. I mean, it's pretty talented. Two pretty talented guys. I'm surprised they're at Kansas. Like,
if they get caught off guard, if Texas gets caught off guard this year, that's a direct reflection of Tom Herman.
Absolutely.
That is 100%. If for some reason you go to Lawrence and you're caught off guard and you go down 21-0 early on, something, you turn the ball over a couple times, punt it away with a 3-and-out, and before you know it, you're down 3 scores. That is the type of Tom Herman that we cannot afford to see anymore if we're expecting the trajectory of this program to continue on the same path.
Agreed.
And if this season's going to play out like I think it is, this Kansas game is a win, and so is Iowa State. But for me, if Texas goes 8-2 this year, it's because they lose to Oklahoma State and Iowa State. Iowa State, to me, I think the Kansas game, they find a way to do it. Iowa State, to me, is, even though it's in Austin, I feel like that's one that is, there's just one of those classic games where you're looking towards the end of the season. If they're coming off with some momentum, if the season's going like I think it is, and they might trip up at Oklahoma State, but then handle West Virginia and then beat Kansas. I don't know, man. The Iowa State game is one that I've had circled for a while on the calendar. How are you guys feeling about this one?
Yeah, with Iowa State, I mean, anytime you bring in a really solid quarterback, Brock Purdy, man, like, you're going to have a chance. And then you've also got the Charlie Kolar, the tight end, man. Like, that kid's a beast, too. So you're going to put your linebackers to work that game. And Iowa State's got those tough offensive linemen. They don't really have much else outside of those, outside of Kolar and the quarterback Purdy. But, they could find some pieces here or there that could surprise. It happens every year. One of these teams in the Big 12 is going to have a couple of guys jump out, and people are going to be surprised by it. I still got this marked as a win. I just don't know if they can stop Texas's offense. So the only way I can see Texas losing this game is if turnovers or Mike Yurcich isn't the offensive coordinator that we thought he was, essentially. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, I think Texas should win this game in Austin. Iowa State's going to be a good team. Here in a second, we'll kind of talk about where we're going to place some of these teams in the final Big 12, like the way this thing's going to shake down. I just don't know if Iowa State is in that upper couple teams in the conference. So I think they're always tough to play. They're well coached. We can talk about Campbell all day about, what's on his plate in the future, but I think Texas wins this game, though. I think what makes this one a little tricky for me is just when you look at the schedule, you're talking about Iowa State being sandwiched in between what could be 2 really, really interesting road games to wrap up the regular season. And how does that kind of play in the mentality of, like, if you come off of a hard-fought kind of game at Kansas – and then you have one game after that where they got to make a trip to Manhattan. I'm not suggesting there's any like kind of overlooking of Iowa State, but maybe a feeling of relief coming back home or something like that and getting caught off guard by a team that is going to be well prepared and is going to play tough, hard football. So, I think Texas wins, but I think this is another one that, not surprisingly, is going to be a pretty close game, I think.
Yeah, this is a win for me as well.
Yeah.
Going down the schedule, it's a win, but this is just the game when we talk about Tom Herman trip ups, losing a home game to Iowa State when you would, if everything's gone as planned, you're right now you would be in position to play for a Big 12 title. To lose an Iowa State game at home, that's the sort of thing that Tom Herman, to take the next step, is going to have to clear those hurdles. It's a win for me. And then you look at going to, Kansas State, what's the deal? Is this? I mean, is this? Can we get the Kansas State monkey off our backs here? Is this going to be a thing where this is a game on the road, in December 5th, going to Manhattan, Kansas? I mean, this is not the way that I would have picked to end the schedule.
No, me neither. This is I'm glad Tom Harmon got that win in Manhattan a couple years ago to break that, what was a 16-year, 16-year run of terror in Manhattan. What was it? The 0-2 Corey Redding blocked field goal game at K-State was the last win before Tom Herman and the Horns went up there in 2018. So that said, I mean, this isn't the Kansas State that we grew up with. I think this is a team that Texas should handle, but yeah, into the season with a chance to play spoiler and maybe keep a team like Texas out of the Big 12 championship game or out of the playoff or a race or anything like that, it's going to be tough.
Yeah,
Weather's a factor too.
Yeah, weather's a factor. For me, it's, are you an elite program or not? This is what will tell me. Are you 8-1 going into this game? If you're an elite program, you win this game. If you're not there yet, you lose this game. It's as simple as that. You're more talented. There's no reason why you shouldn't come away even double digits without the crowd factor being as big as it is this year. They don't have the talent this year to compete with Texas, but that doesn't mean that we come out flat or whatever it is. I mean, it's college football. Anything can happen, right? And for me, this is a nerve-wracking game if you're 8-1 because you've seen what Tom Herman's done sometimes in these situations, and it's the fact that it's just Kansas State. Like, I still have nightmares about L. Roberson, Jordy Nelson, like Darren Sproles, like I still wake up in the middle. Yeah, Michael Bishop. I still wake up in the middle of the night, like just thinking about road games at Kansas State, and they're gonna have those. They're gonna have that tough, hard-nosed sense about them. That's just the way that program is, and they're gonna have a bunch of junior college kids. They're always an older team, always an older team. But guess what? This year we're older. This year, so that factor should be gone. People lose sight of the fact that, like, Kansas State, it's like, man, you get a lot of JUCO transfers that come in here with chips on their shoulders, and that's why they turn out so many good players and why they beat so many teams that they shouldn't beat. And so, but this year it's like, man, you just go down the board and we're just loaded up with seniors and juniors that are your best players. So to me, you need to come out of this one with a victory, and it should be 9-1 and should be preparing to play either Oklahoma or Oklahoma State in the Big 12 title game.
Well, that's a perfect segue there to we got a little under 5 minutes here to kind of wrap up our conference picks and stuff like that real quick. But let's just real fast. So going through that schedule, let's put some numbers on it. I'm gonna go 8-2. I think given what we've been discussing about the schedule, I think some of those tough ones are going to break one way, some of them are going to break the other, and I think this team goes 8-2 in the regular season.
I've been hovering at 8-2 for a while now. The more we've talked about this, the more as the weeks have gone on and as we get closer and closer to it, I like how much the schedule lines up for the University of Texas football team this year. I think it's a 9-1 season. I think the Oklahoma State loss is something that, and I'll go ahead and actually I think they go 9-1, and then we'll save our conference championship picks for later. So, Mike, how do you see the schedule playing out? Put a number on it.
9-1. Yeah. With the upside of 10-0. I'm not joking. This is the best quarterback you've had. This is the Colt McCoy senior. This is the Vince Young, 05 year. This is like, it's all there. Man, anything less is going to be really, really disappointing outside of injuries and things like that. So that's where I'm at on it, guys, and not to be a homer, but
well, I think that's fair. I mean, I think I just don't know how much faith I have in the coaching staff quite yet to get over that hump. And this, I think the talent's there. I think all the pieces are there. So, we might have a frozen Jay there, but so we'll see if he unlocks or thaws out there. But Mike, is this a team? Does this team win the Big 12? Oh yeah, exactly. He thought about Manhattan, Kansas in December. That's all it took. Does this team win the Big 12?
If the coaching staff hires were correct, yes. if we missed on either Jurisic or Ash, then no. That's what it comes down to for me. What about you?
Um, I mean, I think 8-2, this team can still play for a conference
Mm-hmm.
championship, just given how the schedule is going to play out. And that being said, I mean, I still think they can win the Big 12. I think
Yeah.
the only thing is 8-2 might be enough to keep them out of the playoff,
Mm-hmm.
but I think they can play for and win the Big 12, because I think a hiccup on the road or at home or something like that, they'll be able to handle business in Arlington. But Jay, real quick, does this team win the Big 12?
Yes, and it's against Oklahoma State.
Okay.
Nice. You're gonna
We
shout
got
Oklahoma out. I love it. I
we
love
got
that
it.
No,
podcast.
yeah.
We got a little under 2 minutes here. Let's real quick fire. Name your offensive, defensive player of the year, and a newcomer of the year.
Go ahead, Mike.
Offensive player of the year, I'll go with Sam Ellinger. Defensive player of the year, man, I'll go with, honestly, man, I just love this season. Joseph Osai, to be honest with you. I hate to do it, but man, this is it. This is the year.
And who's your newcomer?
Newcomer of the year, man, we're bringing in Bijan Robinson. I don't know if we can sweep the slate on that thing, man, but it's probably going to be the kid from Oklahoma. So Spencer Rattler. So
Jay, who you got?
Yeah, I think it's Chuba Hubbard. I know that's not very against the grain. I feel like Chuba Hubbard will end up getting that award because I do feel like it's going to be Oklahoma State and Texas playing for the title game. I think he's just that good. That's not a knock against Sam either. I mean, I think both of those guys will be Heisman finalists. I think, and if not, they'll both be close. You know, no matter how the season goes, even if they're not, if you wouldn't be considered a finalist or whatever. So. But for me, it's Chuba Hubbard, and I'm going to go with Osai as well as the defensive player of the year. I just think that the shift to the outside, being able to just pin his ears back and go, he's the guy for me. And then I'm going Rattler as well from Oklahoma as a newcomer.
I'm going to go real quick here. Hopefully Zoom doesn't cut me off. I'm going to go Chuba Hubbard, offensive player of the year. I'm going to go Osai, defensive, and I'm going to go Bijan Robinson, newcomer of the year.
nice.
Welcome back, everybody. Nice dramatic end to our second segment there. Right on the money, too. That was walk-off shot. Well, let's get right back into it. We'll transition talking from, obviously the Texas preview and the Big 12 preview into let's talk about the national picture. This last segment here, part of our big college football preview. As we've discussed, and everybody's pretty aware by now, the Big 10 and the Pac-12, as of today, are not playing football this fall. So that really leaves us out of the Power 5 conferences, obviously the Big 12, but then also the ACC and the SEC. Let's start with the ACC. Clemson, just still loaded, still Clemson. I don't think there's any question. I don't know if any of us are going to disagree on this, of Clemson being the favorite to win the ACC, and probably by a pretty decent margin. Can anyone give them a fight in the ACC? Can anyone make this close?
Yeah, what do you think?
It's them. It's Clemson and everybody else. The short answer is no.
Yeah.
I mean, there's going to be some. I think underneath Clemson there'll be some jousting for positioning, but to me they're just far and above the most talented team, the best coach team. The ACC is Clemson's to lose. Mike, you agree?
Yeah, I think it's they're head and shoulders above. Could they trip up somewhere potentially? But I mean, look at this. You got ETN coming back. You've got Trevor Lawrence coming back. I mean, they're just loaded on defense. They're recruiting lights out. So they're just going to stockpile and reload and just take down the ACC. I kind of like North Carolina, not to take them down, but man, Mike Brown, resurgence, man. The recruiting factor has been huge this year.
Yeah, I think Notre Dame could give a little bit of a fight since they're playing a
Yeah,
full ACC schedule this year. I think
Right.
we were looking at a case where it could be Clemson and Notre Dame playing twice.
Mhm.
Um,
sure.
I I don't know if Notre Dame's good enough to win that conference, but they might start off the season. I think you could argue them and North Carolina can argue over the second best team in that conference. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, I don't see anybody really getting within arm's reach of Clemson though. I think one quick one to watch in the ACC. I think Miami. I think the Hurricanes could make a little bit of noise. They've got Derek King, the transfer quarterback, coming in there now. They might be a top 25 team. Um, but yeah, I think this is Clemson's to just run away with, honestly.
Yeah, I think the only chance that Notre Dame and North Carolina would have would be the quarterback play.
Yeah,
They're not that far behind Trevor Lawrence. Obviously, he's the number one pick next year. But Sam Howell, great freshman year for North Carolina, and then you look at Ian Book. I mean, he can do a lot of different things. And it's just the overall talent
yeah,
outside of that is just overwhelming. It seems like so for me.
yeah. Clemson's really deep, and I mean, we'll get to our kind of playoff picks here in a little bit, but I think they're, for me, an easy
Yeah,
shoe into one of the playoff positions. So, um, well, let's go to go to where it just means more, and the SEC. It's going to be really interesting here in the SEC with the schedule revamp. There's no more of there's not the kind of 8 conference games and a bunch of cupcakes to pad win loss records. This is actually going to be the true like SEC gauntlet
yeah.
schedule. Um, what do you guys think? I mean, obviously this conference is loaded year to year. LSU is retooling. Mike, who do you have as the contenders, to win the SEC, but also, for that playoff position and national title hunt?
Yeah, I think the SEC is going to be really interesting this year. I think it's a little more open than it's been in a long time, honestly. I think you get some dark horses that'll come up in there. But I think you look at it, though, it's going to be the same three guys, jostling it out here with Alabama, LSU, and Georgia. Um, I think Georgia is going to be interesting because I watched a ton of this Jamie Newman kid and man, this he can do a lot of things. And I think he's actually in Vegas right now. He's the third highest odds to win the Heisman this year, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken. Um,
yeah,
and people sleep on him because he played at Wake Forest. Man, this kid he can run and he's got a cannon for an arm. So this I think could be the difference maker. Obviously, you got to keep Bama in there. They're loaded as usual. It'll just come down to if their quarterback, can make some things happen because you got Jalen Waddle and the other kid, I forget his name, Smith, I believe, uh, at receiver that are probably going to be first round picks. So they can be super interesting. And the LSU is still talented, man. They still have Jamar Chase, who should be one of the top picks in the draft next year. And then Derek Stingley Jr., he's probably the best cornerback in the nation. So you still, although they're retooling a ton of positions and their quarterback play might not be there with Georgia and Alabama, um, they still got some of the best players in that conference. So.
yeah. I mean, just on Alabama, real quick, looking at their schedule, to me, it's actually a pretty favorable schedule for Alabama. Some of the SEC schools, whenever the 2 additional games were added, kind of got stuck with some real challenges. That doesn't seem to be the case for Alabama. Um, I just think their talent level. I think at least in the West, it's theirs for the taking. The East is pretty interesting. I agree on Jamie Newman. I think that's going to make Georgia a really interesting one. I think Florida, though, I have something. I feel like this might be the year where Florida re-enters that conversation about really contending to win the league. Um, those are really for me the big ones. I mean, LSU retooling. I don't think A&M is there. I Auburn. I know there's been some noise about Auburn, but I just don't know. I know they've got Bo Nix coming back, and they can probably make a little bit of noise, but. And then I think maybe Tennessee you can put in there as a team that could be
That's
in the
my
top
dark horse.
25. Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe make a little noise in the East, but to me, it's going to be Bama, Georgia, or Florida, or I think depending on how the schedule breaks and things happen, I think those are the three that And I'm going to give the nod to Bama just on experience and talent and all those things. So, Jay, what do you think?
Yeah, Florida for me is the team that I think will come out of that side of the conference. That's just we're going to see so much this year. I feel like the games are going to be – we're going to see some great football, and we're going to see some unexpected football on some levels. Alabama talent-wise is far and away, I think that goes without saying that Alabama and with their talent and coaching is on that same – obviously with Clemson when you have them in that same discussion. I don't know if Alabama is necessarily the team that we're going to see during all of this craziness, this slip up a couple of times. But I feel like one of these big name teams that we're looking at preseason and considering being one of those that could compete for a college playoff spot, I feel like something crazy is going to go down this season. And maybe to me, Florida is one of those teams that could slip in and just have a really, really great year. Everything.
Did we lose him?
You might be a little frozen there, but I completely agree with him there. That's what I think. I think Florida. I don't have their schedule in front of me right here like I did with Alabama's, but I think Florida is kind of that. I don't want to call them a dark horse because I mean it's the Florida Gators, but like.
Right.
I think this is where they turn that corner.
Yeah, I think they found something with the quarterback last year.
Yeah.
So I think he's going to be one of the better players in the league. And then their defense, I mean, they got a lot of really good players coming back. And then it's just, they're well coached on that side of the ball too. So you can expect really good. And it's at a weaker conference. Or that side of the conference is a little bit weaker. So, yeah, I could see them making some noise. But overall, I mean, who did you make as your pick for the SEC?
I mean, I think just overall, I think it's hard to go against Bama at this point. Even if Florida does win the East, or I don't know if they're quite at that level of Alabama yet. But I totally agree with Jay. Like, this is one of those seasons that's going to be pretty wild, and if it does come down to a single game, or the SEC championship where it's Florida versus Bama. Anything can happen. Anything can happen.
Agreed.
Sorry, guys. I don't know where you lost me there, but Florida for me is definitely that dark horse for to sneak into like a playoff situation. Sorry about that. My studio acting up out there wasn't getting a good reception. So
hey, I know all about it.
Oh, you're good. You're good. So we've discussed the Big 12. We've discussed the ACC. We've discussed the SEC. I think the biggest conference story for me this season is the G5 schools. Without Big 10 and Pac-12 competing for a playoff spot, is this the year that we get a G5 school into the playoff?
Yeah, I think it might be. That's really tough though, because I could see you got to take the winner of the Big 12. It feels like you got to take the winner of the Clemson, and then I feel like you're going to take two from the SEC. So I don't know. I don't think the NCAA obviously wants that, but they're going to try every way to keep one of these G5 schools out, especially if it's between a G5 and like Georgia or something. You know what I mean? Like.
Everybody says they love an underdog story, but nobody actually wants to watch an underdog play.
Right.
And every when we talk about in March Madness, when you have teams like George Mason that make these tremendous runs, and everybody's like, oh, what a great story. Nobody wants to watch George Mason play in the Final Four. It is a great story. But people aren't trying to watch these second-tier conferences get spots in the playoffs unless, we look at it, and are there any teams to you that can that could break that barrier, Mike, and that would stand out? Is there anybody at all that you could see that could just wow us so much that you could say, all right, yeah, man, they deserve that spot?
Man, I'm just looking at it, and the more I think about it, the more it's the Big 12 winner, Clemson or the ACC winner, and then two SEC schools. Like I don't think there's a way, especially with the way that they're playing these games this year, where it's all conference really. Um, the big boys are playing the big boys this year. There's no mistake about it. There's no SEC team that is going to be 9 and or, a 10-win team because they had three cupcakes. You know what I mean? Like it's going to be a war out there. And just think about it. If on the West you have Alabama and then you have them playing Florida, well, it's very likely that there's a team on either side of the conference that's right behind them that was an 8-win. What is it? They're playing 11 games this year, I believe, right? Or are they playing 10?
Who's that? The SEC?
SEC, yeah.
10.
10,
10.
yeah. Okay, so yeah, I mean, you could see that 8-win team that maybe a top 10 team in the country. It's like, are you not gonna? Is the NCAA gonna take one of these G5 teams over them? I don't know. Okay, do you have someone coming out? Because I don't see it, man. Especially with a year when revenue is
Well,
huge right now.
I mean, looking at the AP Top 25, the first release of that, and I know this still is taking into consideration Big 10 and Pac-12 teams, but you have Cincinnati at number 20 and UCF at 21. Those probably I'm not going to remove those ones from the Big 10 and Pac-12 from here now, but you remove those out and they're probably starting as top 15 teams in the AP going into the season. And I know they're AAC, but I almost feel like that with everything being as funny as it is this year, is this the perfect opportunity for the playoff committee to basically like serve up a Cincinnati or a UCF to the playoff and say, you've been asking for it. Two of our Power 5 conferences are out this season, and here's your opportunity just for them to go to a semifinal against Bama or Clemson or something like that. I don't. That being said, I don't see that being the case. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't. If it, I, we're going to get to our playoff picks here soon. Given the SEC's strength and the way that it is kind of a round robin as much as it can be in a 14-team conference with a 10-game season, I think there is actually some validity this season to say if Georgia is 8-2, they are that much better than an undefeated UCF.
Right, because you would think they'd be like 11-2 and or 10-2.
Yeah. So like I think that argument this year where people go, well, the SEC is just that strong of a conference, and so a 2-loss SEC team should get in over a 1-loss Big 10 team or Big 12. I think this year that argument will hold a little bit more weight just
Right.
from, so that said, I don't see a G5 team getting in, but this is their opportunity though. I mean, if UCF, you can only play the games that are on your schedule. And if they just blow through everybody and they look impressive, and maybe it makes the conversation a little more interesting. I don't know, but this is their window to do it, I think.
They can make themselves a championship ring if they want.
Yeah.
I don't care. That's the long and the short of it, man. Like I get it. Like I could see them. You have a case. It's not a good one though for me, and I just don't see them being able to. It doesn't translate for me with their schedule. It doesn't translate for me.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, I did pull up UCF's schedule just out of curiosity. They are playing Georgia Tech to open up the season, so they do have that is the +1 for the ACC school, but ECU, Tulsa, Memphis, Tulane, U of H, Temple, Cincinnati, South Florida.
Yeah, so I mean, basically, Cincinnati's one of those two is going to knock each other.
And then there's the
I mean,
AAC championship game,
right.
so there could be a rematch there with Cincy or Memphis or something like that. But
it sounds like a lot of programs that play on Wednesday nights.
Yeah, sounds like my Thursday afternoon freaking college basketball DFS slate.
Yeah, I think they do have a Friday night game on here actually, UCF.
Yeah,
but
of course.
I mean, do you guys think that the playoff committee is going to take any kind of different approach than they have in previous years, given how all the circumstances surrounding this season?
I don't think they do because they need the power teams to be in the playoff this year.
Yeah,
they need it. Like with everything going on, you need viewership. You need. Yeah, I just don't see I just don't see it happening. But hey, you never know. I mean, this is going to be a weird year, like you said,
Yeah.
man. So, yeah,
It's
if there
going to
was
be a
ever a
weird.
chance to do it, you might as well do it this year, right? But then you open up the floodgates for years going
Yeah,
forward.
it's going to be a weird year, but in my opinion, there will still be clear-cut teams that will fill those playoff spots. To me, there's going to be a lot of crazy stuff that happens. I just don't think it happens to a certain few teams, and somebody's going to get in just because the eye test, you're going to be able to see. They're not going to – I think the SEC does get two schools in, and it's just not going to be the year for that. I'm sorry. It's not.
Yeah.
All right. Well, moving on to the Heisman conversation. Mike, you mentioned earlier the Vegas odds. I saw it was that Justin Fields had the #1 odds, but obviously Ohio State
Don't bet
probably won't be
that.
playing this fall. So you move him from it, and basically you're looking at a top 4, according to Vegas as of now: Trevor Lawrence, Jamie Newman, Spencer Rattler, Sam Ehlinger. That's your top
Jesus.
4.
Spencer Rattler. I mean, really, the guy is Oklahoma. They just churn him out, man. Right?
That's basically Lincoln Riley.
That's
Yeah,
exactly
the Lincoln Riley
exactly.
effect. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Mike, go ahead. I'm sorry, Kerry. I cut you off.
No, you're
there,
good. I think
Will you
you
list
got a
them off
great
one more
point there.
time,
Yeah.
real quick?
Yeah. So the highest to lowest. So Trevor Lawrence, Jamie Newman, the transfer QB at Georgia now, Spencer Rattler, Sam Ehlinger.
God.
My Heisman pick's not even on there.
Who's your pick?
Chuba Hubbard.
Chuba Hubbard.
Yeah.
Mike, who you got? What are you thinking about that? Those odds there.
Well, because Oklahoma's going to put up video game numbers against some of these. I mean, they're going to run it up on West Virginia and some of these schools. And so he could throw for 400 yards in some of these games. You know what I mean? I could see Rattler being up there. But my hot take, man, just because I've watched him a lot last year, is Jamie Newman, man. Like, I like Georgia this year. Like, that's my team out of the SEC this year. So, well, that's where I'm at with it.
If this is not really going too far out of the box here, I'm going Trevor Lawrence. This has that kind of, like, this feels like kind of one of those seasons with everything and all in his. This is almost going to be like kind of the career achievement Heisman season for Trevor Lawrence. I think the committee, even though Rattler's going to put up those kind of numbers, is going to say something like, "This is his first year starting. He'll have another shot in winning this trophy."
Yeah, I could see that, but I could also see Etienne potentially eating into his.
That's a good point too. Yeah. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
I just feel like the Heisman's gone so far away from even thinking about running backs being a candidate that it's such a quarterback-based trophy now. Because otherwise, I do think guys like Chuba, I think Etienne, those guys would be in the conversation a little bit more. I mean, just looking at the odds, it's all quarterback heavy.
Right.
I mean, I think Rattler, it's maybe a little too soon. I think, of course, that's the Lincoln Riley effect that's got him in that top 4. But Newman's the interesting one now, though. That's he's second in the odds of players that are going to be playing this fall. And
well, I mean, you got to think, like, he putting up video game numbers in the ACC, and now he's going to get better players around him. Like, he's going to be going up against better defenses, obviously. But I don't think a lot of people have seen this kid play. And so after the 3-4 games I watched him last year, I'm like, man, like, he's a pretty impressive player. So.
Yeah, and they're going to be a pretty good team. I think you're selling me on Georgia here, so you're making me think about this a little bit before we get to our playoff picks. Who wants to start? Who wants to go first on calling their playoff shot?
I'll go.
All right.
To me, it's going to be very clear cut, and I don't know the order of the rankings, but my 4 teams are Alabama, Clemson, Texas, Florida.
Mike, what do you got?
Oh, man. So I've got Georgia in there. I've got Clemson in there. Texas. That second Big 12 – or that second SEC school is where I'm really torn. Until I see something different, I'm just going to go with Alabama. Yeah.
All right. Well, Jay, you read my mind on these. I'm thinking that Alabama and Florida are the 2 from the SEC, but Mike, you've really made me think about the Georgia thing. And I think Alabama's going to be in, but I think that for me, it's that Florida, Georgia um, question there, and that'll get worked out. But I'm gonna go with Florida. I think Clemson is gonna be in, and even though I think Texas is gonna, I picked them to have an 8-2 season earlier. I do think that they're gonna win the Big 12 this year.
And
So
that's going to be whoever wins the Big 12, as long as they don't have more than 2 losses, is going to the playoff. I mean, that's just
yeah,
the way.
yeah,
Yep.
and I do think in this kind of situation, an 8-2 Texas gets in over. We were talking about UCF and that. I think they get in over that, but I also think that a 2-loss Texas team probably gets in over if Notre Dame or North Carolina makes, if they're a 1 or 2-loss team coming out of the ACC, I think Texas breaks that tie and gets in over them as well.
Oh man, how would Mac feel?
Scares you to death.
What a neat deal.
You love to see it, but so I'm going Alabama, Florida, Clemson, Texas.
Nice. Who do you guys
That's what
have
happens
winning?
when you do. That's what happens when you do a show together. You start thinking alike, I guess.
Yeah.
Who do you guys have winning it all?
Clemson for me.
Yep.
Jay, Clemson?
Yep.
All right. Yeah, my head says Clemson, but my heart says put another one on the board.
Oh man. Put it on the wall, man. Put it on the wall. That would, oh man, trust me, I think we all would love that.
Yeah, man. That's spend another $50 to get the.
Hey, I tell you
well
what,
worth
guys,
it. Well worth it.
I came into this season with a lot of skepticism about Tom Herman. I'm still not 100%. Like, I've been saying this for a while. He's got to show me. Like, I want to see it. I do think that the way that the schedule lines up, the way that the coaching staff is lined up, the way that everything going on around surrounding it, you have one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the history of the program. You've got a favorable schedule. You've got a situation where you're not fighting off other conferences for a spot in this playoff.
Yeah.
There's just so many things that line up for Texas for it to happen this year. Tom Herman's been pointing to 2020. I don't think that these are homer picks, guys. I truly think that Texas has a legitimate chance to play for a national championship, at least play in the playoff this year. And, Sam Ehlinger, this will be the year that they decide, when it's going to be one of those retire the number quarterback of the year award type. This is where he cements himself. The talents around him, he's going to be put into a position to be successful. He's got all the ability in the world. It's going to be I really feel like it's going to be a special year for the University of Texas. Maybe not national title winning special, but it's going to, in my mind, I think this is going to be a special year.
Yeah, I think this is a legacy forming season for Sam. I think he has, at minimum, to win a conference championship this year to solidify that spot in the pantheon of Texas quarterbacks. He could put up all the good numbers. He can do all those things. He can show out. But if this team doesn't win a conference championship, it doesn't matter. I hate I love Sam. I think he's got all the talent. He's shown it. But it's a team sport. At the end of the day, we care about championships. We care about wins and losses. And to me, the floor for this team is 8-2. Anything below that is a disaster for this team. But I think the ceiling, the sky really is the limit for this team this year. I agree with you, Jay, on the Tom Herman thing. I think this is, I think Mike and I were talking about this off air a little bit about, for me, the going with an 8-2 record is not so much about the talent and about the players and everybody on this team, but it's, I don't know if I trust Tom Herman quite yet to say like, this can be a 10-0, 9-1 team that can be as consistent and make those kind of decisions throughout the year. I hope I'm wrong. Because it has to happen this year. If the bottom falls out on this team, barring any kind of devastating injury or something, but like, it's going to be a real uphill battle for him going forward at Texas, I think, because this is it. This is the time that they need to win a conference championship.
Yeah, and I just, man, personally, just want it so bad for Sam, man. Like, his story, his father. At the emotional post about the Alamo Bowl win was the last game that he went to with his father. he just does so many things well. The whole support with Black Lives Matter as soon as it happened, like, yeah, I just want him to have that year. You know what I mean? I don't know him on a personal level or anything, but of all accounts, man, this kid does things the right way, and you want to see people like that get wins in life. You know what I mean? And yeah, man, I just look at the roster, and I don't remember the last time, maybe '09, maybe even '09, man. I'm struck. We played for the national title that year. If you look at that '09 team, there was a lot of defensive players that were really good that year. '05 was everything, but '09 it was Colt McCoy
and Jordan Shipley.
And then the defense, because you had Sergio Kindle, Lamar Houston,
Earl Thomas.
That was more of a defensive. Look at that game with Nebraska. I mean, it was the defense that won that game. Colt made a couple of plays, and then that magnificent throw out of bounds. You know what I mean? So I look at the talent, and I'm like, man, it has been amassed at a lot of positions. And now you just got to find a couple of receivers here. You already know what you got at quarterback. You know what you got at running back. You got some studs on the offensive line. You've got experience on the offensive line. Defensive line, you've got a stud and some up-and-comers. Linebacker, you just need some progress there. Secondary, got a ton of experience, man. It's just – you look at the kicking game, should be pretty good. Special teams hopefully gets better with these coaches. And you're just, like, going down and you're trying to find, like, where's the weakness? And even if someone were to go down at running back, well, you've got, like you said about the kid Watson, like now he becomes the third string back, but this kid was a finalist for, there's a lot of good players that come out of D2 schools. You know what I mean? So it's like the only player that could really, really hurt this season is going to be your quarterback, because obviously you don't have anything proven behind him. And the offensive line, like you said, Kerry, there's not a lot of depth there. So that is really nerve-wracking. If Cosme goes down, it's going to be a struggle this year to play with those. If you get into the playoff, you've got no chance. If you don't have really, I might not even have a chance for the Big 12 title if Cosme and you have a couple of like minor injuries in that offensive line, because there's just not a lot of depth there. So
yeah, and I want to say, like, with I picked Oklahoma State to beat Texas in the regular season. Obviously, that would mean I think they'll play Oklahoma State as in a rematch in the Big 12 title game and win that. But Oklahoma State to me is another team that by the end of the year, with as much talent is there and as the type of just constant threat Chuba Hubbard will be, as long as he's healthy, like that, Oklahoma State's going to be a team that if Texas drops down, I could easily see, and Oklahoma too, they're obviously that talented, but Oklahoma State is another type, like when I think of a Florida, somebody that's jumping in to the picture during the year that anybody really could, I guess.
Like
Oklahoma State. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, totally. I think, I think Oklahoma State's going to be pretty good. But as we've been talking about, and the theme throughout all this, it's right there for Texas's taking. Yeah. It's right there.
Yeah, my difference.
We've mentioned the schedule. We've mentioned all these different factors. I've talked about, like the offensive line injury. And basically, when it comes down to the theme that we keep coming back around to is it's set up for Texas.
Yeah.
And as long as there's no devastating injuries or anything like that, this is a team that should win a lot of games this year, as long as the coaches stay out of the way and don't mess it up.
Yeah. Right? One last point. I know we're running out of time here. Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, they're going to be there offensively. What is it going to be there defensively? And I think that's where Texas has the advantage is, Texas is going to have the offense this year, hopefully, with the coaching. You should be able to exploit, like Oklahoma State on defense. I mean, they don't really have much going on there. Like, I can see them just trying to win shootouts. They've got a couple of guys, but that's about it. Oklahoma, they're going to have some players there, obviously, with recruiting and stuff like that. But they don't have the two best of those three teams. We have the other than Ronnie Perkins at OU, we probably have two of the three best players in those three teams on defense. So, like, it just everything lines up for this year, and so I'm super excited. We'll see what happens, though.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. We're getting close to the season starting here, and we're gonna find out soon enough. We'll see where our.
And I think you guys make great points too about Tom Herman. Is he the guy? Because you cannot lose that game to Baylor or Kansas or at Kansas State. Like, if you're gonna be elite, you're the guy. Yeah,
we're not talking about an SEC schedule here. where,
Exactly.
you can go through that schedule this season, even for someone like Alabama, who I think is going to win the majority of a lot of most of their games, but where you go through that and go like, if they lose that one, I don't really blame them. Texas, for me, the OU game is really the only one on that schedule, just because of the history and the rivalry and the talent that OU has amassed. That's the one where you shrug your shoulders, go, well, shit. All right, we'll try again next year against that team. There's no other game on that schedule there I would be okay with a loss. When in previous years, that wasn't always the case. You can go, okay, well, TCU's loaded, or, those kinds of things. It's just not, and to me, that comes back around to the coaching staff, because they should out talent everybody on this schedule,
Yeah.
even Oklahoma.
Absolutely
And
agree.
if the coaches get in the way, and if the coaches are making, stupid personnel decisions or game time decisions, all those kinds of things, then it'll be a problem. But
Yeah.
well, we'll let Jay get back in here real quick. We got a couple minutes, but no, man, this has been, there he is. Let's get him in. All right, let's get Jay back in here.
Yeah, man, this was a lot of fun.
Hell yeah, man. This has been great.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me on and everything, man. You guys are doing great stuff. I was telling Kerry off air, Jay, that my family watches this stuff, and I think my dad might have subscribed to. Hey, man, you guys joke around about 10,000 subscribers, man, but you guys are doing great stuff, and I'm just happy to be a part of it every now and then. So I do appreciate.
Oh yeah.
it.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. We always appreciate what you bring to the table, your insight on football, on the world, everything in general, man. We appreciate you and what you do for the show, too. Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks everybody for. I guess we'll wrap it up there. We're running out of time, but thanks everybody for watching. We've been looking forward to doing this show for quite a while. I think when we started this whole thing early in the early days of the pandemic, I think we all kind of had our eyes on the horizon at being able to do like our big, Longhorn and college football preview show. So everybody enjoy the holiday weekend. College football is not far off, and yep, let's hook 'em horns and let's go.
Hook 'em damn horns, baby.
Let's go win.
Oh.
Let's go win something this year. Let's win a trophy or a couple.
Let's get McConaughey in.
Yeah. Well, thanks guys, and thanks again everybody for watching, and we'll see y'all next time.
Peace.
Look 'em.
See ya.